Hello guys, welcome to the new video tutorial on Angular for the beginners. So in a last video tutorial, we guys have understand what is the basic bindings on Angular that can be done using interpolation and using property binding. So in a advanced binding concepts, we are going to check two types of binding. One is for Angular two-way binding and other is for Angular event binding. So Angular two-way binding can be done like as we have seen when it comes to one-way binding. One-way binding can be done by our backend, that is what the TypeScript to our HTML file. Whereas the two-way binding means whatever the changes that we are going to made on the HTML, the same changes are going to be reflected on the backend also. And when it comes to event binding, so there are some event that we are going to be registered for our HTML components, and that can be shown at the runtime in the backend of our TypeScript file also. So let us have one single example right here. So when it comes to two-way binding, as we have understand, the two-way binding means whatever the changes that we are going to made on the HTML components, the same changes are going to reflected in a TypeScript also. And to make that done, we required the forms module that first we have to import in our app.module.ts file. So let us do that step by step. So here I will come with the file. So I have to go for app.module.ts file. So I will go to the app.module.ts file available in app folder. So in this file, I'm going to add one more import statement. So I have to import what? Okay, import, my file name is forms module. So this file we have to be import, and to import any libraries in the Angular framework, you have to write an import statement, and as well as to the import array of the same file here, we have to be import that file right there. So let me import here. So I'm going to say again forms module, right? So next thing that I need to do, I wanted to design some bootstrap frameworks or bootstrap inputs and the buttons. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to create that all the things into the bootstrap. So let me search for the bootstrap CDN. Okay, adding the bootstrap for your web applications to the Angular is quite very simple. You can just go to the bootstrap CDN. Okay, you can take the bootstrap CDN. So this is what my CSS for bootstrap. So I'm just going to be copy from here. I will get back to my index.html, and in the head section here you can paste that link command which style sheet related to our bootstrap file. So this is how simple it is. Now you can use your bootstrap classes to n number of components that you are going to be created for your web applications. All right, so okay, we have included the forms module successfully. Now I'm going to open the app.component.html where the Angular is shown. So what next I'm going to do here is to create a div for a header. So let us create a div by using the bootstrap class. Let us say container fluid. So I'm going to use container fluid so that width will be on 100% at a runtime. So I'm going to put the background color to that. Let us say background primary, and some paddings also I'm going to give. Let us say padding 2. Okay, let us check how does it looks like. So probably here we are. So this is our header right now is getting available. Next thing that I need to do here is to add the h1, or let us say I'm going to add the h2 by writing the class as a text center, and my data here is Angular, let us say advanced binding. All right, so save, and this is how it appears. So let us change the color. So I wanted to change the color to the white, so I'm going to use that text white as a class to print that color as a white. All right, now next to this I'm going to create a container which is right bottom to this div, and there itself we are going to perform the two-way binding. So what I'm going to do here in the example, I'm going to create a text box right here. And once I click on the text box, whatever the paragraphs or whatever the data right there in the text box, I wanted to show them in a paragraph, so that whatever the data coming from my HTML that I'm storing at the same time to my TypeScript and the TypeScript variable, we are going to print it right here. So for this, the basic requirement is to first create a backend TypeScript variable. So I will get back to the backend, and here I'm going to create a variable. Let's say my variable name here is the input text, and those belongs to the string data type, and the initial value is empty string. Alright, now app.component.html, after completion of this div, I'm going to create other div, and I'm going to provide the class as a container, and margin from top I'm going to give as a 2, and yeah, we are going to change the colors also. So I'm going to put them as BG warning. So background, the warning I'm going to put, as we haven't given any padding, so it's not getting visible. So let us provide a padding as right now 3. I'm going to remove the later on. So this is how it appears. Now what I need to do in this respective part of div container, I have to put the input type text. So I'm going to say input, okay, type equals to text, and I'm going to provide placeholder also, and that placeholder can be, let us say, enter data or enter information, anything that you can write as per your comfort zone. And next to that, I'm going to create a paragraph, and in the paragraph, using string interpolation, I'm going to print that variable what we got created, input text. So I'm going to print that value of input text right here into the paragraph. Well, I have some certain changes that needs to do. Okay, this is not a two-way binding, but obviously we have seen this is interpolation in Angular, so that we are conducting the information from our backend, that is TypeScript file, right here, and showing to the HTML. Now I wanted to synchronize this text box to my input text variable, those I have created into the app.component.ts file, and to make them synchronize, as we have included forms module to the app.module.ts. So from there we are going to use one single attribute, and that name of attribute is what, ng model, and then equals to, you should have to write that same variable name, that is input text, so that at a runtime it is going to be managed with that data. I guess there is something wrong into this. Instead of this round bracket, we are going to say curly brackets into this one, and this square bracket I'm going to be complete at the last. Okay, let me check with this. Alright, so this is how it appears. So we can see we have provided a property, that ng module, and in this ng model we have given the variable called as input text. Now what exactly happens? Let us first check the output. So you guys can see it appears like this, and as right here there is no any paragraphs available. So I wanted to put them in a center, so I'm going to use the command called as text center. All right, so it is appears in a center. All right, so what next is going to be done, as this is a HTML element I got created with the text. So whatever the inputs where I am going to provide to this HTML input is directly storing to the variable called as input text, which is stored at our backend file, and whatever the data which is there at the input text simultaneously represented on the paragraph. So two-way binding means what? Passing the data or taking the data from HTML to our TypeScript file, and whatever the data we are getting, we are just confirming that same data I'm receiving or not. Alright, let us check with this. So I'm going to just provide the information as LeadSoft, and you guys can see in the paragraph it is printing as a LeadSoft. What if I am just going to say the Angular based YouTube tutorial? So it is going to print that data right here. So whatever the inputs that you are going to provided, the same input, firstly it is going to store to our TypeScript variable, and then using string interpolation, as you guys are aware of this, if you can see the last video, there we have checked with this interpolation concept. So using that interpolation, we are printing that data right here, and this is called as the two-way binding in the Angular. So to make the two-way binding, there are 2-3 points are really very important. Let us figure out them. The very first thing that you guys have to do is what? Go to the app.module.ts and import forms module to your application. Importing a module is to add the import statement and add that name of module to the import array. Next to this, when you are whatever the component that you have to binds binds that information to the TypeScript variable, there you have to give this variable. Okay, as you guys can see, when I'm going to write this symbol, okay, this exactly means to the interpolation in Angular. In the last video we have checked with this. When I'm going to write these symbols, well, this means by the property binding. What this exactly mean by property binding? And when I'm going to write these symbols, well, this is mean by the two-way binding. So this is how this interpolation or property binding or two-way binding will works at a runtime. Well, this is an example for two-way binding, that's fine. But what if I wanted to works with the event binding? I have some events, I have a button, or I have the input text or something I have, and I have to provide that binding to my certain TS file. Well, that concepts also we can able to implement easily using the event binding concept. What is event binding? So the same example I'm going to be explained. Let us take that apart. So I'm going to utilize the same div right here with the margin top, and I'm going to change that warnings to the, let us say, primary, or we can use, okay, let us take it as a primary, or I'm going to use them as secondary. Right, so this is how it looks like. You guys can see now, as per my information, I don't want to write that data right here, as one variable is getting shared. So two-way binding is provided with all the variables. I don't want to, like after while typing, I don't want to show it on a screen. What I'm going to do, I'm going to add a button on it. So let us add a button. So here I'm going to say button, okay, which belongs to the class of btn and btn primary from the bootstrap, and I'm just going to say here as click me. Alright, so I'm going to remove this two-way binding of input text. I'm going to create one more variable for this and check with that. So this is how it appears. You guys can see click me button, and there is one paragraph. In that paragraph we are going to print the data. Now for storing this variable or this input value in the two-way binding, I got created one variable right there. Now to get this value, I'm going to create one more variable. Let us say this is input type text 1. Okay, I'm going to change the variable at my backend also. So let us say this is input type text 1, and I'm going to create again one more input, that is input type text 2, that belongs to the string data type and nothing stored into that. Well, what I need to do right here is, first thing that I'm going to do is to generate a click event on this button, and to write that event and binding of that event to our TypeScript function, we should have to use the round brackets. Okay, whenever it's event binding, you should have to use the round brackets. Whenever it's a two-way binding, then you should have to use square bracket, and inside the square bracket round bracket. And when it's interpolation, you should have to use double opening and closing curly brackets. And again, at the same way, if it is the property binding, you should have to use opening closing square bracket. So for the click event, we have a method called as click, and here I'm going to call any other method. You can take any name, that doesn't matter, but I wanted to pass the value of this text box to that method, so that I can able to set it to my input text to variable, and then I can able to print it out right here. And to get that value of this input text, I should have to write the ID attribute. Okay, ID attribute, you can write it in two different ways. Either you can directly say it's hash, let us say it is data1, or you can write ID equals to data1. Both ways are fine to implement. So as per your comfort zone, you can use it. As I'm using hash id 1 here, so that is what the id for the data. So I'm going to create a method called as, let us say, change, and I'm going to pass this data1 dot value. So I want that value from that input field, so I just say data1 dot value I required. So this change method right now having an error. It says change does not exist on the your TypeScript file, so which means you have to write that function. Let us write the function having the string as argument. So I'm going to say change and value of the string as a arguments. Now you guys can get back to the HTML. You can see the error is got removed. Well, this change will going to deals with the information those we are going to type at this text box. So this text box value is passed to the change function. So I'm going to assign that value which is there in val argument right now to the input text. So input text we can access like this dot input text equals to value. And here in the paragraph, after the button, I'm going to write a paragraph, and in the paragraph I'm going to print that input text 2, so that whatever the result we are going to achieve by this input field, we are going to take it right there. And this is called as an event binding. So one event we got generated, and we have bind this event to our any user defined function by having the argument. So let us check with this. So I will get back here. Let me just go to the new line so that you guys can be able to see. So this is what two-way binding. So whatever I'm going to input here, simultaneously it is going to check that information. And here to event binding we have written. So what if I just say Angular 16 tutorial, and I just click on this click me, then this data will appears right here. If you wanted to change that color, so I'm just going to put here the class as text white so that it appears well. Alright, so let us check with this. Okay, Angular 16 tutorial, and just click on click me, so you guys can see this is event binding we have done, and this is the two-way binding we have written with so far. So if you guys have understood what is two-way binding and what is event binding in Angular, please give us the thumbs up, do share, do like, and stay tuned for the next video tutorial. Thanks for watching this video.